Hey everyone, today I have the Urban Decay Wild Greens palette to share with you. I'll be sharing swatches, some looks I did, and my thoughts on the palette. So this is a 12-pan palette with a good split of mattes and shimmers. I think there are 6 shimmers and 6 mattes. And I'm just showing you the outer packaging here. It's all cardboard and it has this kind of bifold lid. And this is the box that it came in. And just for size comparison here, I'm showing it next to the original Naked palette. It is the same length, but a little bit thinner on the side. So if you have other Urban Decay palettes, this will stack nicely together with them. So here's an overview of all of the swatches. I am going to go through and do them individually and describe each shade so you can get a better feel for each one. So this first one is called Chill, and it's just a pale light beige shimmer, and it has all small particles and a pretty good color payoff. This next one is called Lo-Fi, and it is a pale peach with a matte finish, and this shade actually does show up pretty well on my skin. This next one is Kickback, and it's a medium neutral brown with a matte finish. This one's good for in the crease or the outer corner. This one is Fuzz, and this one is mostly made up of larger sparkles. Some different colors, but they all kind of show up as a warm gold. This next one is Turmeric, and it is a medium matte orange with a few larger sparkles. They don't really show up all that well on the eye. This next one is called High Vibe, and it's kind of like a pinky orange. It shows up more pink than the other one in the same row, and it has a little bit more fine shimmer in it. This next one is called Earthside, and it's a light medium brown, good transition shade for me. This one's called Super Greens, and it's a pale mint green, slightly blue leaning. This one's called Prickly, and it's a kind of bluish teal, has larger sparkles in it, as well as smaller shimmer particles. And this next one is called Twist. This is kind of like a golden green, a light golden green, and it also has larger sparkles in it. And this one is called Kale, kind of a medium yellow toned green. And like the shade above it, it has some larger sparkles in it, but very few, so they don't show up very well. And this last one is called Stash, and it's a little bit of a smoother shimmer. The sparkles in it are smaller than most of the other shimmers. And I'm just going to show you up close all of the swatches so you can see them with more detail. Hopefully you can see the kind of different colors in the shimmers and the size of the shimmer particles in them. So this was my first look using this palette, and I went in with a ton of shades, which is usually what I do when I use a new palette, just because I'm usually excited and I want to try everything all at once. I have marked everything that I used on the palette there on the top left corner. So in general, my thoughts on this first look were that I was pretty happy with how all of the mattes performed. I was happy with the color payoff. They blended easily. The shimmers were a little bit less impressive. I felt that they needed some help to show up. And later on, after using this palette several times, I realized that what was happening was that the mattes have kind of a dry quality to them, and that makes it even harder for the shimmers to adhere. So the shimmers are a little bit less opaque than the mattes are in this palette, but I think they're still good quality. It just, I have to kind of adjust how I apply them to get them to show up well. This was my second look with the palette, and I decided on this day that I wanted to focus on all of the green shades. So again, I felt like all of the mattes performed well here, and the two shimmers, I applied both of them with a wet brush. They both had lots of sparkle fallout, and they both needed to be built up. I think that Twist is not showing up quite as well here in this look. The shade's a little bit different than the shimmer next to it. When you look at it at certain angles, it looks like nothing, but then at other angles, it really reflects the light. So it just kind of depends on what angle you're looking at it at. In general, it is a little bit more sheer than the one next to it. This was my third look, and I decided on this day to focus on all the oranges. This is kind of what I do with a palette. I will kind of go in without any sort of plan on the first look and use way too many shades, and then I will start to figure out color combinations that I want to use or play with, and so that's what started happening here. So yeah, I used everything on the top row, and I used the two shimmers, the one that's on the lid and the one that's on the lower lash line. Both are applied over glitter glue. The one on the inner corner is just applied with a dry brush. For my fourth look, I wanted to do something kind of neutral, but I did want to use that olive green shimmer. I do kind of like how a grungy green looks with browns. This one I did use glitter glue also on the center of the lid, and then I applied that green shimmer over top. I do think it helped that shimmer to pop a little bit more. When I use this shade dry, it doesn't have that same kind of intensity or sheen to it. And this was the last look that I took photos of. I did continue to wear this, but I didn't have time and I didn't take photos on the other days. But on this look, I wanted to do a combination of the greens and oranges, and it came out a lot lighter and brighter and kind of springy, summery looking. So I really did like how this one came out. I used all of the shimmers dry in this look, and they ended up having more of a sparkly effect applied that way. And I think you can probably see on the outer lower lash line, the shade Fuzz is interesting in that it has a kind of a blue-green shift to it at certain angles if it's built up. Here I didn't build it up, but because it's a little bit out of focus on the lower lash line, you can kind of see that blue-green shift a little bit more. So that is an interesting shade in this palette. So I do want to comment on the packaging here. You can probably see this is a little bit different for Urban Decay. Most of the palettes that I have from them are kind of your standard flip top palettes. They went with kind of a dual-sided lid with this one, which at first I found kind of annoying, and I found that it took up a lot of space on my desk, but I later tried flipping both of those sides all the way over to the back, and it is possible to do that without forcing it or causing damage. So it actually doesn't take up that much space after realizing that, but it might be still kind of annoying, just something to consider. Here's some other palettes that I pulled out to compare to this one. I pulled out two ColourPop palettes, the Just My Luck and what is that other one called? Mint to Be. Just so you can get an idea of where the green tones lie compared to those. And I have on the left the Smashbox Desert palette, and on the right the Natasha Denona Mini Gold palette. You can probably visually see where the greens lie. I think quality-wise compared to all of these, I like the mattes in the Urban Decay palette more than pretty much everything else here. I like the shimmers probably a bit better in the Smashbox palette. I would say the Natasha Denona shimmers are kind of similar. That gold one in the center has a similar quality to it as the ones in the Urban Decay palette, but the deeper green from Natasha is probably slightly better than the one in the Urban Decay palette. And the shimmers in the ColourPop palettes they're all pretty decent. It just depends on the shade. They're probably a little bit more opaque than the ones in the Urban Decay palette. So I've used this palette for about a week. I've had it for more than a week, but I used it solidly for about a week, and the more I used it, the happier I was with it. Just the overall selection of shades and the quality. It's only 12 pans, but I think the shades are thoughtfully chosen, so it makes it kind of fun to come up with different combinations. And it's pretty versatile and perfect for this time of year, for warmer weather. A little bit more colorful, but it isn't your typical like pink and bright green spring kind of thing. It's a little bit closer to like a summer color theme, but it still works for this time of year. And overall, I'm pretty happy just with this purchase. There's a few drawbacks, like I've mentioned previously. The lid design's a little bit strange. It might be annoying for some people. The shimmers needing to be, they need some help, either using a damp brush, layering, using a glitter glue. You can also apply them straight to bare lids or straight over a primer and then go in with mattes. That's another way to get them to show up a little bit better. So just the general drawback of having to apply them a little bit differently than like the typical order of doing like a matte eyeshadow and then putting shimmer over it. And that's about it. Otherwise, I feel like this is something that I would recommend. I think it's a good quality palette.